Israel. First and foremost, as always, I would like to give all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakaha, Kodash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return, and double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. And I know it's not just me, but I am certain that it's other brothers who are in the spirit as well, who notices or realizes that the weather seems very, very off in the year 2026. And this is something that the younger generation would not be able to discern or to understand, because they were not born in, the early 1980s, the early 1970s. They weren't born in 1950, where weather modification was nowhere near as heavy as it is now. So for those of you who was born in the 1940s and you're still alive all the way up to this very day, you would know what I'm talking about when I say that the weather and the seasons seem very off in the year 2026. Okay. When I was a child, and I'll never forget this, but when I was a child, I remember how spring used to always come around in the month of March. Okay, now this is when I was a child. When I was living with my mom, my stepdad, and my siblings. And I remember, being the winter time in like the month of January, we would get dressed, we would go outside, it'd be cold as hell out there. And the first thing that would always come to our mind was that, when I say our, I'm talking about, like me, my younger brother, my younger sister. We always used to, think to ourselves or tell ourselves how we could not wait until the month of March. And that was a very common saying back then, even amongst grown folks. Oh boy, I cannot wait till the month of March, because usually in the month of March, that was the month where it would start warming up outside, because after the month of March, which what usually come next, April showers, right? And a matter of fact, the month of April used to be, we used to know April as April, the month of April showers, because in the month of April, not only would it start being warm outside, even though it would feel like a transitioning between the winter into spring, because usually in the month of March, I would say usually around the third or the last week of March was when it would usually start warming up outside. The snow would melt. Okay. And a matter of fact, you would actually get less snow. You wouldn't even get snow towards the end of March. Okay, and then in the month of April, forget about it. You never heard about snow in the month of April. You never heard about it being cold in the month of April, unless it was on some rare occasions. But even then, I could never recall a time when I was a child and it was freezing outside in the month of April. So, you know, when March would come around, I would say around the 3rd or the 4th week of March, it would start warming up outside, you know. And again, it'd be more warm than chilly outside. I mean, of course, you'll have like that little chilly wind, but of course, because you know it was a transition from wintertime going into springtime, and then usually in the month of April, I would say like maybe the 2nd week or the 3rd week of April, which more commonly the 2nd week of April is when you would start getting April showers. And that was so the plants could grow, the grass could grow. You would see the cherry blossoms beginning to blossom on the trees, you know. And again, you'd always get those heavy rains, you know. So the month we used to know April as the month of April showers, because in the month of April, that's when you would always get all those heavy wind. That's when, not heavy winds, that's when you would always get all those heavy rains. Okay, sometimes thunderstorms, you know. So, you know, by the time the month of May came, usually in the month of May, that's when we were entering into the beginning stages of summer. Okay? And I would say that usually around the 3rd or the 4th week of May, you would officially be in summertime. Okay? I used to remember all this when I was a child. Growing up, even in my teenage years, the weather cycles were always like this. Okay, in the month of May, usually around the 3rd or the 4th week of May was when you would officially enter into summertime. And trust me, I know, because in the month of May, which was when we would be entering into a summer vacation, you know, for those who would do good in school, you got good grades, you know, you did your homework, you always came to class on time, you know, you got to pretty much enjoy your summer vacation by spending your time home with your parents, your brother, your sisters, your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, and so forth. So usually in May was where summer vacation began. And summer vacation usually started towards the end of the month of May. So we know that in the month of May, usually when it was time to, you know, get out of school and go home, it was beautiful outside. Clear blue sky, or sometimes you had a blue sky, but there were little clouds, little puffy clouds here and there, but the sun was beaming. And you could literally feel the heat from the sun beaming down on your skin. Because, you know, you was just getting out of school, and, you know, sometimes they'll have the AC cranked up in school. So, you know, it was just cold as fuck in that building. So when it was time for you to get out of school, you know, you got to go outside and feel that warm or slash hot sunbeam beaming on your skin. And this was usually in the 3rd or the 4th week of May. And this is where summertime officially began. And summertime will usually last from the 3rd or the 4th week of May all the way to I would probably say towards the end of September. So summertime always felt like one of those long, dragged out, beautiful seasons. That was, those were the days when you had plenty of time to, go to amusement parks with your family. You got to go to Dave and Buster's, laser tags. The things that your parents used to do when you were a child. Or sometimes your mom might take you over to your auntie's house, which was her sister's house, and because her sister might have been holding a cookout, while your family was cooking out, you had radios playing in the backyard. You had a basketball hoop on the top of your if your cousin, the son of your mother's sister, or the son of your mother's uncle-in-law, or whatever, or the son of your mother's uncle, maybe he might have had a basketball hoop, sitting above the door of his parking garage. He used to be in the you should be in the backyard hooping while your family was grilling out. So you knew that you was in summertime, which usually began towards the end of May, which will usually be the 3rd or the 4th week of May. And in the month of June, forget about it. It was just blazing hot outside from the month of June all the way to July to August, and all the way to towards the end of the month of September. And then of course in the month of October, that's when fall would begin. The heat wave would start to tone down a bit. The leaves on the trees will start to fall, turn brown. So you knew you was in fall, the season of fall. And it was called fall because that's when, the sun would withdraw its heat wave, providing light and all that stuff to the trees to, give it life, keep it healthy, strong. Because, we were entering into the era of winter time. And winter time usually started, I would probably say, in the month of December, towards the first day of September. The early December was when winter time would begin. So you can see this whole seasonal cycle, this natural whole seasonal cycle that the Heavenly Father have set up. And what the self-proclaimed white man did was he disrupted that cycle through what the world has come to know today as geoengineering. Now, for those who don't know what geoengineering is, geoengineering, when you go into that word geo, the word geo is another way of saying earth. So earth engineering. You have the saying terraforming. Well, there's a such thing called geoengineering, which is the modification of the earth. And a part of the modification of the earth is tampering with the earth's weather and seasonal patterns. And through decades of geoengineering, which came in the form of spraying chemicals in the air, spraying unknown substance in the air, spraying colors in the air, modifying the weather through the use of the HAARP program. The result of this have left the Earth's weather the Earth's weather and seasonal patterns into being completely out of whack. And this is why you see birds you normally see in the summertime, you still see flying around in the wintertime. Or, in some rare cases. But now it's not becoming rare anymore. It's becoming something that you see more often. Okay. Birds that just seem to be flying around out of season. Birds that usually hibernate within particular time frames are not hibernating in particular time frames because they can't tell if it's summer, spring, if it's fall or winter time. So you see these Edomites, in which we know that the biblical Edomites is the self-proclaimed white man, which starts with the so-called elites who call themselves Rothschilds or Rockefellers, trickling down to the rest of their nation of people. These are your biblical Edomites today. And we know that according to Job chapter 9, verse 24, the earth has been given into the hands of the wicked. When you look up that word wicked from google.com, what kind of definitions do you get? You get definitions like evil or morally wrong. And it tells you in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 4, that the soul within these Edomites is not upright in him. So if his soul which is within him is not upright, what does that tell you? He's not going to do right. Okay, he's always going to do wrong, and he's always going to be up to no good, doing something to tamper with the earth's weather system. He's always going to be up to no good, doing something that does not produce life, that is not conducive to life, that is not productive to life. Okay, these Edomites are anti-life, as when we go to the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 4, yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied. But heapeth unto him, gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. So Habakkuk 2 verse 5 indicates to you that these Edomites, the self-proclaimed white man, is as death and cannot be satisfied. Okay, these Edomites are anti-life. One moment. Excuse me for that. The Holy Scriptures tell you that these Edomites are anti-life. They're not about life. They're all about death, man. But Paul said, I don't know which apostle it was who said it, but Satan has transformed himself into an angel of light. These Edomites love to portray themselves as being the superheroes, at these God, holy, fearing people. But they're everything but what they portray themselves to be on TV. Every time they portray themselves to be the good guy, because these devils, which when you go into the word devil, it goes back to the Latin word diabolos or diabolus, which literally means a deceiver. Okay. So, these motherfuckers are a bunch of liars and deceivers, telling the world that they love everybody, and, they like to portray themselves as being these people who go around helping animals. But it's all just an act, man, to rock you people to sleep and to keep you from seeing the matter of the true problem. Okay, Okay, these motherfuckers cannot be trusted. They're only going to keep getting busted because their wickedness is going to continue to get rusted. But nonetheless, okay, for decades, these Edomites have been using their HARP program. They've been using geoengineering to mess with the Earth's atmosphere. They have been using their pseudoscience to justify trying to, block out the sun, block out, spray anti-sun ray light beams in the air to prevent the sun from, fully shining its light down here on Earth. They've been using these different Earth weather modification methods to basically set the whole course of the Earth's weather and seasonal patterns off track. And well, like the Lord said in the book of Jeremiah 49 verse 10, okay, the Lord have made Esau bare. Okay, and he shall not be able to hide himself. And for decades upon decades and decades and decades, these Edomites have been hiding under the pseudo race of being white when they're everything but white. Okay, when you look up the word white, it does not fit these biblical Edomites, which is the self-proclaimed white man. The word white means pure, innocent, clean. It means holy. And Edomites, which is the self-proclaimed white man, is everything but white. And the reason why we call these so-called white people the self-proclaimed or so-called white people is because they're not white. According to the Holy Scriptures, they are red. Okay, they are red. And why are they known as being red? Because they have no melanin, they have no pigmentation in their skin. Okay, whenever they stand out in a hot blazing sun for too long, what happens? Their blood starts to show forth underneath their skin, which causes them to appear red. So, in the book of Genesis, there's a reason why it tells you that Esau came out red all over. When Esau came out of Rebekah, he was born red all over like a hairy garment. He was red in the sense that he was born with no brown skin. He was born with no melanin in the skin, which made it possible for you to see the blood under his skin that would show forth under his skin, which would cause him to turn red. And that's the same thing with Esau's descendants, the self-proclaimed white people you see today. Okay, whenever they stand out in a hot blazing sun too long, whenever they get too cold, whenever they get embarrassed, angry, upset, pissed off, what happens? Their blood starts to show forth under the skin and they start to turn red. Thus, that's why Esau is known as Edom, according to Genesis 36 verse 1. When you look up the word Edom, it goes back to the Hebrew word Adawam, which means red. So this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 24 verse 1. Behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. And how have the Lord turned the earth upside down? He turned the earth upside down by basically setting the Edomites up in rulership, which is why when you go to the book of Isaiah and you read 29 verse 16, it reads, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. Because for ever since these Edomites have rose up into power, dating back to the Renaissance period, their whole objective has been reversing everything that was set up in righteousness upon the earth and setting up wickedness over it in the earth, setting up wickedness over the earth. So I'll just give you like 3 quick examples. In the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verse 7, or so I believe, the Lord have declared unto his people, the Israelites, which are the Negro, Latino, and Native Indians, that the swine, which is another way of saying the pig, is unclean. Ye shall not touch up their carcass. Okay? But in this society, these Edomites sells pork to people in the markets. Okay? And they even go as far as calling it kosher in some regions. Okay, now is that not an example of turning of things upside down? Of course it is, because the pig pork is not for human consumption. Point blank, period. But nonetheless, these Edomites have called it kosher and said that it was safe to eat. And then people wonder why they end up with cancer, parasites, they get sick, they end up with diabetes, they end up with gangrene. Well, there you go. You eat pork. Now, another example would be the Heavenly Father said in the book of Leviticus, the 20th chapter, if a man committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall be put to death. What do the self-proclaimed white men do? He gives women authority, liberty, and basically the right to go around and sleep with multiple partners. When a woman have sex with more than when a woman have sex with more than one man, especially with multiple partners, what happens? She becomes an adulterer. But a man, we know that a man, according to the Holy Scriptures, can have more than one woman. But a woman can only have one man. But what do the self-proclaimed white men do? He gives women the authority and the power. He gives women the authority and liberty to have multiple sex partners. And basically, he makes it to where you cannot punish them. Because if you go to try to execute the book of Leviticus, where they're supposed to be put to death, you get thrown under the prison for a righteous act. So there's another example of how these Edomites have turned things upside down, especially in this society. Another example, okay, the Heavenly Father told his people that we are not to wear mixed fabrics. But here it is, these Edomites, whenever you go to their department stores, like the Burlington Coat Factory or whatever, you might even go to Walmart or TJ Maxx, Targets, whatever, to go get your clothes, right? You look on the back of your clothing tag, it'll say 30% polyester, 70% cotton. That's wicked. You look at your shoes. Your shoes are supposed to be all leather. Now, you look at particular shoes, okay? Some of your shoes are a mixture of cloth and leather. That's another example of the mixing of fabrics. And we're not supposed to wear clothes mixed with fabrics. Some clothes is like 40% cashmere. Some clothes are like 40% cashmere. And then 60% suede. So you see, he has everything turned upside down in this society. The man is supposed to be the head or the authority figure of the house, the head leader or ruler of the house. But what does he do? He puts the woman, he makes the woman the leader or the head of the house. That's upside down, because the man is supposed to be the leader or the ruler of the household. So the Heavenly Father has made things upside down in the earth by setting up the wicked, which are the Edomites, as top rulers in this society. Okay. So now notice how it says the earth is empty. Now, when it says the earth is empty, it doesn't mean that, you know, there's no living species on the planet. You know, like the only thing that's on the earth is just, you know, grass, trees, oceans, and, you know, but there's no people, there's no animals or insects, this, that, fourth, and another, this, that, fourth, or the other. Now, when it says that the Lord had made the earth empty, it means that the Lord has been made empty in the sense that there's no standard moral conduct in the earth on how people are really supposed to live. Okay, because the whole entire earth is under the control and rulership of heathens. Okay, I mean, what do the East Indians know? You know, every year they hold some retarded ass ceremony where they're laying on the ground and shit, allowing cows to walk all over them to commemorate and to show their appreciation for the bovine, which have giving them many victories in war and all this other dumb shit, you know. Shiva, which was supposedly some dot head who stopped the deluge with his dreads, which is where you get the Shiva Jatas from, you know. Or what about the Africans, you know? What do they know? That they're still keeping their same customs, you know. They like to bathe in cow piss. They like to have sex with rhinoceros, wild animals. They like to build houses and caves made out of doo-doo. They like to put bowls in their lips and stick sharp bones through their mouth cheeks. You know? And a lot of these Hamites, these Africans, which are the modern day the biblical Hamites, okay, they you know, they're still in tune with their Egyptian gods. Okay, they still worshiping Horus and Nut and Put. You know, so they don't have any morals standards. No, what about the Arabs? They like to march around a cobblestone, hump it, you know, spit on it, touch it, do all kind of weird shit to it. You know, they like to worship false gods such as Allah, you know. And another thing about some of these Arabs and East Indians, they don't believe in taking showers, man. You know, like, how the fuck are you going a half a year of not taking a shower? That's because the water is sacred, and we believe that water should really be appreciated. So we show our appreciation for water by not taking a shower. Bruh, if you don't get your little funky ass in that motherfucking bathtub and rub some soap under your motherfucking arms. Like, bro, and these are all heathen customs. You know, I mean, and you know, I mean, even Jake who's homeless, you know, he'll find a way to wash his ass. You know? No, well, what about the Chinese or Japanese people? They have their own gods. Kimash, Buddha. Okay? And through their idols, they believe they can eat whatever they want, you know? They'll cut off the dick of a tiger or a lion and make it a delicacy. You know, they believe that if they eat an ox or a skunk burrito, they'll get increased movement speed, increased jump height. They eat a Komodo dragon taco, they get increased jump height. They're able to do more acrobatics. Just some dumb, weird shit, man. Eating live squids. You know? Now here it is. The poor little creature is trying to desperately escape from the bowl, and you just shoving a fork right through his head and putting it right in your mouth. And then this motherfucker, he'll go outside the next day, he'll be perfectly fine. But let a nigga do that. He'll be in the ICU somewhere. Probably pissing out maggots. coughing up purple shit. You know? So we know that the Chinese and Japanese people, they don't have any moral standards. The Hawaiian people, they like to walk around outside half naked, wearing Christmas wreaths around their heads and shit. Okay, they have their own gods. Tutu, you know, Tutmut, you know, Tutmut, who the fuck is Tutmut? Some big long face ass idol they don't made out of clay and shit. Motherfucker got a big ass jaw and a big fucking nose. You know, this is the motherfucker that brings you rain and you know, makes it warm outside. You know, so and look, these heathens don't have it, man. You know, you know, what about the self-proclaimed white man? You know, their god is Satan. That's why the whole fucking world is upside down. You know? And you know, there's different idols or you know, offshoot of Satan, such as Jesus Christ. You know, Santa Maria. No, which that's an idol. You know. No, you got oh yeah, we can't forget about Quaz. You know, Quaz. You got Quaz. You got Christus. You got Serapis. Or Christus, Serapis Christus, you know, and Esau, you know, his idea of living comes from the foundation of the Aleister Crowley doctrine. Do as thou wilt shall be the will of the law. And so, in other words, their philosophy is you know, just be what you want to be. Do what you want to do in life. No, do what you believe is right. So, you know, basically, you could be a grown-ass man walking outside with a whole Batman suit on, wearing some Batman drawers over your Batman suit, with some plastic belt around your waist, and you can literally run around the neighborhood and pretend to be a hero while you got all these tattoos on your arm and shit. Yeah, like this is a part of Esau's philosophy. So the reason why the world is upside down is because the world is being ruled by a bunch of heathens. And when I say the self-proclaimed white man, that includes everybody on this planet who thinks they're white. Okay, the Russians, the so-called white Russians, the so-called white Europeans, the so-called white Australians, the so-called white Ukrainians. You're all Edomites, okay? You're not Russian, you're not a European, you're not a Australian, and you're not a white American. You are Edomites. And that's according to the Holy Scriptures, okay? Y'all come from your forefather Esau, the progenitor of the progenitor of the self-proclaimed white man. The progenitor of the self-proclaimed white man is Esau, which is the biblical Edomites. I mean, excuse me, the progenitor of the so-called white man, of the self-proclaimed white man, is Esau in the Holy Scriptures. Okay, these self-proclaimed white people come from Esau in the Holy Scriptures, which goes back to the book of Genesis. So no one on this planet that has control over the face of the earth or control over their planet, not a single one of these heathens have a moral code of standard when it comes to righteousness. So that's why the whole earth is empty and is turned upside down, because the top heathen on the planet, which is the self-proclaimed white man, is ruling over the planet, according to Job chapter 9 verse 24 and Daniel chapter 4 verse 17. This decree is by the watchers, that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, instead of up over it the basis of men. Who are the basis of men? Well, all you got to do is go to the book of Job. I believe the 20th chapter, Job was when Job was talking about these Edomites, the self-proclaimed white man, he called them children of fools, children of base men. So the basis of men in Daniel chapter 4 verse 17 is talking about the Edomites, who are more viler than the earth. In which when you look up that word basist, okay, just for edification's sake, when you look up the word basist, okay, I looked this up from google.com. Okay, it's I believe that the word vile appears in the word basist. Okay, the word vile appears in the word basist. Okay, basist is the superlative form of the adjective base, meaning most degraded. So these Edomites are the most degraded, the most dishonorable, the most lacking in moral principles. It describes actions, instinct, or individuals that are the absolute lowest in quality, virtue, or standing. You see that? So that's why the whole earth is empty and is fading away. Morally corrupt. Okay? You want to know why the whole weather pattern seems completely off? All you got to do is look no further than the ones who is ruling the earth today. Okay? Key context and meanings: morally corrupt describes behavior that is utterly contemptible, mean-spirited, or vile. You see that? So when Job said that they were more violent than the earth, we know what Job meant by that, meaning that they are base. They are the most dishonorable, the most degraded, the most lacking in moral principles. Okay, being described in the actions of instinct, individuality, or the lowest in quality or virtue. Inferior. Okay, these Edomites are the most inferior species on the planet. Yet the Heavenly Father has raised them up over the whole planet Earth to get back at his people and to punish his people for their sins and their transgressions and for breaking their first covenant. Who are the Lord's people? The Israelite. Who are the Lord's people? The Israelites, which are the Negro, Latino, and Native Indians. Okay, it says low station. Okay, it says low station, belonging to the lowest social rank or position. Do I need to read any more? Okay, and here are some common synonyms: despicable, vile. There goes that word vile again. Contemptible, degenerate, ignoble. So hey, there you go, man. That's these Edomites. So Isaiah 24 verse 2, and it shall be as with the people, so with the priests. And the Holy Scriptures tell you in the Apocrypha, as a king is, so are his people. Okay. Well, I believe it says, and what manner a king is, so is his people. So we know that the top kings on the planet are the so-called global elites. Okay, which when you go to that word elite, the word elite literally means king. The word elite is another word for a king. But anyways, okay. So, and it shall be as with, and you see why people is all bugged out of their minds. They're strung out on drugs, they're doing crack, They're doing cocaine. They're sniffing coke. They're smoking the bong. They're smoking weed. They're popping pills. They're taking shrooms. You see? Which, you know, shrooms is actually, you know, just a natural herb at the end of the day, you know, even though it's been modified, you know, just like, you know, weed, you know, that's been modified. But nonetheless, you know, again, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. But come on, man. Drugs like crack, you know, drugs like cocaine, drugs like the bong, drugs like meth, you know, ecstasy, Percocets, all that shit, man, you know. And again, you know, smoking weed, you know, shrooms. People are strung out on shrooms. You know what I mean? And, I mean, you even got people getting high off of nutmeg, you know, because it contains a poison called myristicin. And I believe myristicin is a poison where if you're eating too much nutmeg, okay, you wake up all delirious, you know, time becomes distorted. You're seeing colors and patterns on walls. You know, people said that they've woken up feeling like shit after, you know, eating too much nutmeg. But nonetheless, you know, you got motherfuckers getting high off of nutmeg, man. You know? Huh?